Artificial intelligence is rapidly changing what surveillance systems can do. Cameras are no longer simply recording incidents for later review. They can now identify patterns, generate alerts, search footage, access behaviour, and provide information that can directly influence operational decisions. But these systems become more as the systems become more capable. To examine why AI and surveillance has become an operational issue rather than simply a technology issue, I'm joined by MacDonald and Terrey, both directors at Vixels. Alex brings extensive frontline experience in security investigations and organisational risk. Aaron brings extensive experience in surveillance technology, video systems analytics, and the practical implementation of AI-embedded security systems.
Thanks, John. Nice to be here.
Aaron, welcome.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Good to be here as well.
So, Alex, to start with you, once an AI surveillance system begins generating alerts or influencing decisions, who owns the outcome? Is it the responsibility held by the technology provider, the security team, the control room operator, senior management, or the person who ultimately acts on the alert?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. Look, I guess the outcome is held by the end user, so the person that's implemented the technology, and then it comes down to, I guess, how they operationalise it. So within the organisation, they would have their own operational frameworks about how it plays out in real life. So that may be going to a security team, to a loss prevention team, that sort of stuff. So it really, the ultimate responsibility for the outcome sits with the end user, but then how they operationalise it within their business is important as to which security teams respond for alerts and things like that. So what we recommend in those situations is obviously having robust policies and procedures in place that govern exactly what happens with the outcome, because you can have the best systems in the world, but if you haven't got the process that sits behind it as to how it's acted on, you can obviously leave yourself open to risk if it's not acted on correctly or appropriately.
Yeah, so Aaron, I'm going to jump across to you. What governance structures should an organisation have in place, especially before deploying AI, particularly when false positives could lead to someone being confronted, detained, investigated, or reported to police?
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, John. So essentially, governance should begin before a product's even selected, right? Not after the system's already been installed. So firstly, the organisation needs to clarify and define the use cases, what the system's intended to detect, why the outcome is necessary, and what action should follow, basically. So it should then assess privacy, legal, security, operational risks associated with that use or with that use case, right? So there should be documented decisions, operating procedures, escalation pathways, and limits on how the technology can be used. So an organisation must define who can access the system, how long the information is retained, how the alerts are reviewed, and how errors or complaints will be handled. So just as importantly, the system needs an agreed performance threshold, and that comes back to what you said around the false positive side. So a false positive that simply prompts someone to review footage is very different from one that may result in a person being confronted, denied, or reported to the police. So the greater potential impact on an individual, the stronger the verification and approval process needs to be. So governance is therefore not just a privacy policy or a risk assessment, it's a complete set of controls connecting the technology to the operational response.
Okay, so Alex, buying an AI-enabled system doesn't automatically create an operational capability. What changes are required in staffing, control room procedures, escalation protocols, training, incident response, data management, and so on when it comes to collaboration between security, IT, legal, and privacy frontline personnel?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, these AI systems are not a set and forget system. It obviously creates lots of operational challenges. Alerting technologies, for instance, of facial recognition or license plate recognition, depending on the size and complexity of the organisation, will generate a lot of alerts. So it's one thing to put the technology in, and the technology will work, but then you create, I guess, the problem on the other end is what you do with the alerts, and do you have the capacity to be able to action the alerts. That's one thing we discovered from real world experience in the Bunnings days, is that you really have no idea the amount of alerts that will come through until you put the technology in, and you do get significant amounts of alerts. So, Bunnings had to set up a dedicated control room to basically manage the alerts that were coming through. So, when we work with organisations, that's the key part that we sort of discuss with them around that, is to, are you going to be able to, physically cope with the amount of alerts? Do you have the adequate resourcing to be able to manage those alerts that are coming through? And how is it set up? Is it going to a control room? Is it going to teams in the field? What devices are they receiving the alerts on? So it goes down to that granular level once you get into an organisation, because that whole operational piece is critical to be able to manage the alerts. The training piece that you touched on there is a massive part of it as well. Anyone that's using these AI systems need to be trained in how they work, for one, but also the operational frameworks that sit behind it. So making sure that decisions they make in relation to alerts are privacy compliant and are following the organisation's documented policies around how they need to do that. And that all comes back to the governance piece that Aaron spoke about earlier in the early days, and that's where you do need your collaboration between all those teams that you spoke about. Your legal and privacy teams are crucial to make sure that the actual use of the technology is privacy compliant in the first place. The operational use of it complies with what you said you're going to do in your privacy impact assessment. So it's one thing to have everything documented as around why you're privacy compliant, but if the operational piece is not mirroring that, well, then you're leaving yourself open to breaches as well. So that's an important collaboration you need to have before you even start. And then, like I said, once it gets down to the frontline personnel that are actually using it, making sure that they're trained, they understand the technology, and that they are adhering to the internal processes. So it is really a group effort when it comes to implementing these things. It's certainly not a set and forget system, and it's something that needs to be continually reviewed and audited too, to make sure that it is operationally compliant with what you said you're going to do.
So Aaron, let's just finish off by jumping back to you. How can an organisation prove that AI surveillance is effective, proportionate, and worth the risk? So, I guess, which outcomes would be measured? Fewer incidents, faster response time, reduced investigation hours, fewer false alarms, or some combination of the above?
Yeah, John. So it's a question we get asked a lot, right? So firstly, I think an organisation really needs to define what success looks like for that specific use case, right? And a challenge we get as consultants all the time is there's no real single measure that proves an AI system is valuable, right? It's a combination of a lot of things. So technical measures such as detection accuracy, false alert rates, response latencies are really super important, but they do not demonstrate the operational value on their own. So a system can perform really well technically and still produce alerts, but can staff actually practically use them, right? And is there is a path, and Alex spoke about that in one of the earlier questions and answers. So the organisation should measure a combined technical or combination of technical, operational and business outcomes. So that can include faster response times, reduced investigation hours, fewer false alarms. John, you just mentioned it before. Improve evidence quality, or even lower losses or better staff safety, right? Which is an important one, especially when we talk about facial recognition and the staff safety and customer safety. So those benefits need to be considered alongside the risks and costs, the privacy impact, the complaints that an organisation can get if they're using some sort of AI tools or especially facial recognition, staff workload, Alex touched on that earlier, ongoing support, cybersecurity, and the potential consequences of an incorrect decision. And that's a big one we see in facial recognition, right? So those are all operational things. So Testing needs to occur in the organisation's real operating environment. So vendor demonstrations and headline figures and brochures, we don't see are enough, right? So performance can change because of camera positioning, because of lighting, different crowd controls, operational behaviour, and the procedures used to verify an alert is a big one, right? Especially around facial recognition. We see a lot of people using 2 or 3 verifiers as a human or humans in the loop to verify that that's an actual outcome. So the real question for us is, it's not does AI work, because it does in a lot of cases, but the question is not does AI work, it's does it reliably improve an operational outcome, and can we demonstrate that the benefit remains proportionate to the risk?
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having a chat today. And don't forget, if you want to hear more about the latest in AI, surveillance, technology, security, and everything else you could ever want to know about, come to the Security Expo. It's happening in the first week of September. You can register now by going to www.securityexpo.com.au. And if you're interested in exhibiting, again, go to www.securityexpo.com.au. There's all the information you need there, and hopefully we'll see you at the show. Thank you.